tell us a great story. Harlan Ellison, his latest work, Angry Candy. A moment ago, we were exorcising our favorite medium, the tube, and we had a great story about to be told, and here it is.
You must trust me when I tell you I am not exaggerating. This is absolutely the way it happened. One day about 4 years ago, I get a call in the middle of the day from a woman who was at one of the three major networks, and she was in charge of creating new films and specials, and she's breaking up with laughter. She's just falling down, and she calls me and she says, I got to talk to you. And she starts laughing so hard, she says, I'll call you back in a minute. She calls me back in about 2 minutes. She says, are you sitting down? You're not going to believe this. I said, I'm down. What is it? And she's roaring with laughter. She says, 2 minutes ago, and she names a man. She says, such and such left my office. Now, the name she names is one of the major producers of television. I mean, we're talking here huge, endless hours of prime time, of the Aaron Spelling, David Wolper, Stephen Cannell. I mean, that level of producer. And she says he comes running into her office. He broke in and said, I've got it. I've got the idea that'll get you the numbers. This is the most fantastic idea for a special that any network has ever done. It's the pinnacle. So she, being a fairly bright lady, says, oh, delight me. What is this idea? And the guy says with an absolutely straight face, let's do The Wiz white. Well, she falls apart again. I fall apart again. I'm really roaring with laughter when we're able to speak. I said, "What did you say?" She said, "I couldn't say anything." She said, "I bit my cheek and said, leave now quickly. Let me think about this." And the guy went out and closed the door, and she fell apart and wet herself and did all those good things. This is the level of thinking of a great many people at the networks. I mean, they're like human beings with the brains of lima beans.
She should have told him, look, let me call an agent I know. I think we can get Judy Garland.
Oh. And that's the way it goes. I had a meeting at CBS on this new production that I'm doing with Roger Corman, and it's a fairly complex matter. And there was a guy there from the network, and I had no idea who he was. You never know their credentials. See, I've been at it 35 years. There's a lot of stuff in this life I cannot do. I can't ice skate. I can't draw. There's a lot of stuff I can't. But boy, I can write. That's what I do. I'm a writer. And here is some schmendrick who 2 weeks earlier was, I don't know, a haberdasher or a hairdresser or in film school, and he met somebody at a cocktail party and said something amusing, and they gave him a job. And he is voicing his opinions on my script. And his opinion means at least as much as mine and more, because he's at the network. And they say things to you like, gee, I don't like this at the end of the script. Give us something different. I said, what do you mean? It's an 8-act script. What do you mean give you something different? We've been plotting toward this ending all the way. What do you want? He said, well, I don't know. I just want something else. So I said, well, when you figure out what it is, jerk, come and tell me. He says, well, what do you mean by that? I said, where the hell were you when the page was blank? They always can second guess. It's like some schmuck sitting around the next day talking about a quarterback who threw the wrong pass.
Is there anything that you really want to write, like, I don't know, the Great American Short Story, or maybe you already have?
I don't know. I've got 1,000 ideas, and there's novels that I'm in the midst of writing, and movies that I want to write, and all of them just seem to clamor like children to be let out to play. And that's every day is like that for me. I just write whatever comes to the front of my face.
This may be a meaningless question considering the discussion we've had so far, but I'll ask you anyway. Does Harlan Ellison ever face writer's block, or does that even exist, really?
Well, if you'd asked me this a few years ago, I'd have said no. I enjoy writing, so I don't have a block. But I happen to suffer from a ghastly malaise, a terrible disease called chronic Epstein-Barr virus. They sometimes call it chronic fatigue syndrome. And it attacks high achievers and all sorts of other people. And it's very difficult to explain it, but it produces not just block so that you can't work, but it produces a fatigue, a lassitude, a weariness that is deeper than the Maricot deep. It's all encompassing, and I go down like a poled ox, and I lie there. I can't think. I can't do anything. The mind goes blank, and it's worse than writer's block. And I've had it for about 12 years. For the first 8 years of it, nobody knew what it was. They thought it was endogenous depression. They thought it was mono. They didn't know. And finally, over the last, I guess, about 4 or 5 years, they have discovered that in fact this thing now exists, and that maybe 85% of the people in this country have it dormant in their system, and all it takes is the various triggering devices for it to go off. And it went off for me about 10, 11 years ago, and it's gotten hard to work. It's gotten very hard to work. Every day is a struggle for me. The boundless leaping joy that I have always felt in going to the work has become like it's like slogging through concrete wearing concrete boots.
With about another 30 seconds to go here, not at all to skip ahead of Angry Candy, your latest work, but what else might we be seeing or reading in the near future from Harlan Ellison?
Well, in February, a publisher named Underwood Miller is bringing out a large collection of my film essays. I do a regular film column every month for a magazine, and I've been writing film reviews for about 25 years. And the book, my column is called Harlan Ellison's Watching, and the book is called Harlan Ellison's Watching. That'll be out in February. And finishing up a novel based on, well, there's a story of mine called A Boy and His Dog that they made into a fairly successful movie, and that was always intended as part of a novel called Blood's a Rover, and I'm near the conclusion of that. I've been on it now for about 8 years writing that novel. And, you know, every day I get up and I go bop into the typewriter and something comes out.
Well, it's good
About 2 weeks ago, I'm out here on the West Coast. I've done a series of commercials for a new line of cars that Chevrolet's bringing in called the Geo imports from Japan, and they sought me out and asked me if I would do these commercials, and I thought that would be fun. You know, I've never did a commercial, so I'm the spokesperson, and there I am on these terrific, classy ads. So I've been, all of a sudden, a lot of people who didn't know anything about me, didn't know I had all these books. They said, gee, he's personable, you know, he's got a great TV queue. Why don't we see if this guy would like to do something? And then they discover that I have all these books, and they say, ooh, wouldn't you like to do a series, and you can be the new Rod Serling? I said, no, I'd rather be the old Harlan Ellison, thank you. So they set me up with this Schmendrick at HBO, and the people who went to him are very, very big people in the industry. I mean, they're not blue sky merchants. And they said, Harlan Ellison, I said, oh, yes, I've heard the name, and, you know, I understand he's very, very good and very famous, so on and so forth. And they said, well, you know, we'd like to do a series with him, hosting his own stories and things like that. Well, why they went to HBO when Ray Bradbury had just left because he couldn't stomach those people, I don't know. But anyhow, this guy who was the executive says, he says, well, what's his vision? What's his vision? They said, well, you know, he's got all these books. Well, I haven't got time to read the books. I haven't got time. The guy calls me, and he says, what's your vision? I said, well, it's about 2020. I need He said, no. He says, what they want this week's jingoism. You know, does it have a hard center? Has it got a top spin? You know, is it front loaded or back loaded? And I said, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I said, I write these stories. That's what I do. And I write television, and I know how to put together a show. If you want to do a show, we can do it. He said, well, you're going to have to tell me what's your dream, what's your vision, what's your vision? And I said, well, pick up any one of my books, read any story. He said, I haven't got time for that. I have a lot of meetings. I said, you're too important and too busy to read what you're going to put $1 million into each week? I said, isn't that a little fiscally irresponsible? He says, well, what do you mean by that? I said, what I really mean, sir, is that talking to you is like talking to my own armpit, and I obviously don't want to go into business with anyone who's as big a jerk as you are. For openers, you're only going to get worse as we go along in the production, so take a hike. He says, well, do you mean you want to cancel the meeting? I said, boy, are you quick. And that was the end of that. So I told these people, the producers, they were very happy that I blew a couple of $1 million a week.
All right, be looking for Harlan's latest short story, Recipes from Puree of Bat Guano, as we go to Cleveland now. And you're next. Hello.
Mr. Ellison, great to talk to you. 2 questions. First, has anyone ever done what you consider to be a good satire or parody of your work? And second, since you're talking about stories about your work in the TV industry tonight, why not tell the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea story?
Okay.
There's a man who knows my past, my checkered past.
Oh, okay. Well, let's start off with the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, first of all. What's that story?
Well, what happened was this. Many years ago, when they were doing Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, which was produced by Irwin Allen, and we used to like to refer to the show as Voyage to the Bottom of Irwin Allen's id, I did a script called The Price of Doom. And little did I know, I mean, I'd only been in town about a year, and I was fairly amenable to anything. Little did I realize that Irwin was crazy as a soup sandwich, as they say, and he would call me at all manner of hours in the morning. I mean, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning to talk about the script. And I was like, Irwin, I'm dead asleep. Let me sleep, Irwin. What is with you? Well, finally one day he called me in an absolute panic that there was a meeting with a network censor that a guy named Adrian Samish, who was at ABC, and he was the head of standards and practices, and he said, you must come in for this meeting. You must come in. This man has a lot of problems with the script. Now, how can you have problems with a stupid 1-hour action-adventure script about a bunch of people in a submarine, for God? Anyhow, so I go to this meeting, and we were seated at a... This all appeared in TV Guide some years ago, so I'm recounting old history. But it was a long, shiny, highly polished conference table, and at one end sat Adrian Samish, this tall, knife-thin guy who had, he was to charm as Attila the Hun was to good table manning. And at the other end sits little old me. About 8.5 blocks separate us, and down both sides are all these yes people for Irwin Allen. So this guy starts in with his problems, and he says to me, he says, well, now you have here a fellow named Philip Trelawney. He said, you can't have that. I said, why? He said, well, because the name is English. I said, yeah, it's English, so what? He said, well, it'll be offensive. He's a villain. I said, who's going to be offensive to, the English? I mean, it's an English name. He said, yeah, you better change it. So we're arguing finally. He says, just change it. So I said, okay, how about if we call him Philip Wesley? He said, much better. Okay? So now we go through all of these things, and these are really imbecile things that he's saying, until finally he comes to... At one point in the script, I have the admiral and the captain trapped by this spy. This woman is, and she set charges to blow up the Sea View, and she's going to take the little mini sub, and they're going to die, and she's going to get away, right? So, and she's holding a gun on them. So this dip says to me, I want one of the either the captain or the admiral, either David Hedison or Richard Basehart, to jump her, to try and grab the gun away, and he misses, and he grabs her face, and he pulls off her face, and we see that she's not beautiful, that she's actually hideously scarred and ugly underneath. I said, say what? He says, yes, it'll be just a mask. I said, wait. I said, all through this show, people have been hugging and kissing and fondling this woman, and they don't know she got a rubber face. And he says, well, I saw it in From Russia with Love, and I liked it. I said, well, I saw it from Russia with Love, and I liked it too, but it got nothing to do with this script, and that's a stupid idea. And then he made a mistake. He said, you just better do it, Mr. Ellison. I've had enough arguing with you. Writers are toadies. Do as you're told. And I jumped up onto the chair and started running down the table to get him. And like all great macho gestures like this, you always screw up somehow. There were a lot of papers on this highly polished desk, and as I was running, of course, my feet slipped right out from under me. I slid on my stomach to the end of the table where he was sitting and hit him in the throat with my left fist, driving him backward. He fell out of his chair, hit the wall, and a 6-foot-long model of the Sea View fell off and fell on him and broke his pelvis.
And they lived happily ever.
Whatever style it is I have in my stories, it's probably by this time been rarefied to the point where it's my own voice. But I've been deeply influenced by writers like Frederick Prokosch, who's a writer you've probably never heard of. He wrote a magnificent book called Seven Who Fled, which is about 7 people fleeing a Chinese warlord across the Gobi Desert. It won the 1932 or 1923 Harper Prize Award. It's a gorgeous novel. Mark Twain, Joseph Conrad, people like that. Comic books and pulp magazines. I read The Shadow and Doc Savage and radio. I grew up on radio. It was before television. And I'll tell you, the voice of Orson Welles is The Shadow. The writing of Willis Cooper on Quiet Please and The Mysterious Traveler, I Love a Mystery, were things that really taught me how to write visually, and that's had a huge influence. But most of the big influences in my life have been of other kinds. They've been either musicians like Mahler or Beethoven or Bach, or jazzmen like Thelonious Monk. My writing is in many ways musical. I listen to music as I work, and that's where I get the measure and the feel of the way a work should pace. In terms of influencing my life, which is what influences my work, heroes, Tyrone Power as Zorro, and Jiminy Cricket. Jiminy Cricket has always represented friendship and courage and steadfastness and honesty to me. And my influences come from a lot of very peculiar places. I mean, I wish I could give you all of the wonderful kinds of pontificating, pompous things that really great writers say. Well, they were influenced by Céline or someone like that, and I was not. I was influenced, I think, more by the writers who were writing for the pulp magazines and for comic books than ever I was by great writers, with the exceptions of Dickens and Twain and Conrad, or less on television, because of the commercials. And you may not like them, but they pay the freight. I mean, that's why you're able to get free TV. And I suppose if you like free TV, it's always the advertising that carries everything, whether it's a magazine or a newspaper or a television show. I don't find them that... I'm able to tune them out. They don't really bother me much.
What a terrible thing to do. You must never tune them out. But that's another story.